Hey, it's the big swag Brett Wagner from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003, The Lost Leatherface, and you're watching Dead Last. So listen to the guys and keep watching, or I'll come to your house and steal all your animals and food.
So there's a new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie coming out. So before you watch that, I feel like you should know exactly how this franchise stacks up. So what I did was I asked my patrons to rank them all. And we had a really good turnout for this round, and these guys answered the call. And what they did was they ranked the series from number one being the best and giving dead last to the worst, cutting it down to size. So each movie that was ranked number one gets 1 point, and each one ranked second got 2 points, and then on down the line. And the movie with the least amount of points wins. So, here to discuss these rankings with me today are dead last, I don't know, sort of like our own little crazy inbred family. It's my panel, and I've got some familiar faces here. And let me start off with probably the one who's been on the most, and it's Mr. Matt. Matt, welcome back to the show.
Oh, thanks, Josh. As you can see, I'm on a starship. I was abducted. Very cool. They're treating me well. They gave me this cool Frankenstein David Bowie shirt. So yeah, life is good, man.
Nice. And you just moved and got a new gig, right?
Yeah, I got a new job, new place in Long Beach by the beach.
Yeah.
Life is good. Life is interesting. Life is stressful. As you can tell, I look disheveled. There's a reason for that. Moving is the terror. I'm just letting you all know that.
Moving on now to another familiar face. You've seen him before. I figured for talk about Texas Chainsaw movies, I had to ask on the man, Brawlin' Bo. Welcome back to the show, bro.
Hey, Josh, thanks for having me, man. I'm looking forward to going down the Dead Last series of Texas Chainsaw. You know, the films that we watched on this is absolutely amazing.
And you, now I make fun of Amityville movies quite a bit, and you're now in an Amityville movie, right?
Yeah, I got the honor and pleasure to work with director Thomas Churchill for Amityville Moon. It's out on DVD, Amazon, I believe Prime it's on there streaming. I had a nice little bar scene with my boy Brett Wagner, who also was the Lost Leatherface in Texas Chainsaw, the remake. So yeah, thanks to him and thanks to Thomas Churchill for getting me the opportunity to be in that film, the Amityville Moon.
And coming up next, the first time on Dead Last at all is the Wee Nerds from the YouTube channel, the Wee Nerds. Welcome aboard.
Hello. Hi. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
And Daryl, who is Mr. Meathook, had a channel called Mr. Meathook that I followed, and it is now you've now moved cross country.
Correct. Yes, I moved from California to Michigan.
Nice, and for a very specific reason, I gather, correct?
Yeah, for her.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the show. I hope you guys are excited to talk about some chainsaw movies. Because we had, like I said, we had a good turnout for this one. We had 33 rankings come in, which is a pretty solid number to have. That means that the best score that a movie can have is 33 points. That would be if everybody ranked it number one. And if everyone ranked it dead last, the movie would get 264 points. We have never had a movie sweep number one, and we've never had a movie sweep dead last. I'm still waiting for that to happen. Is that going to happen here? Let's find out, because in dead last, right now, with 215 points, is Leatherface from 2017. And this was a bit of a surprise to me, but apparently this movie is very not liked. It was ranked dead last 9 times, and the best score that it got was third place, which one person ranked it in third. On the panel, Matt and Bo, you guys both really hated this one and gave it your dead last. The Wee Nerds, you guys both also disliked it. You gave it 7th place, which is pretty darn low. And I guess I liked it the most, but I did not like it, but I gave it 6th place. Let's go to Matt. Matt, you gave it dead last. So what about it, this one in particular?
This movie just doesn't understand the source material at all. It doesn't understand the character at all. Leatherface is not a pretty boy nurse hitting on dude in an asylum. That came from this Sawyer family that I don't even recognize any of the characters. Like Drayton Sawyer never acts like that in the original movie. He's a businessman. He doesn't like killing, really. He just does it, to feed his family and all that. They totally skipped all that. They're like, oh no, they're just all insane. It'll be fine. No, none of that worked for me. It's almost like a Devil's Rejects ripoff. It's like if Rob Zombie mixed Devil's Rejects with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is, it's not a far stretch there. But at the same time, I don't want that. I want a documentary looking film. I want gritty. I want grindhouse. Nothing in this movie. It's too polished. I just despise it. I could barely get through it. I'll never watch it again.
If you think about the beginnings and origins of Leatherface growing up, I want to see a dirty farmhouse. I want to see an abused kid getting tortured and picked on by, bullies in his school, and having him, become Leatherface rather than just start off as a pretty faced, teenage kid and then have it, build into why he was Leatherface. It just doesn't make any sense. It was stupid. I didn't enjoy it at all. I really felt that they could have taken this film and made it, the beginning, like everyone was hoping for, and really, really, make it just where we got to see the inner growing ups of Leatherface. And it just was not that at all. And they had that stupid twist where you would guess thinking the bigger guy was Leatherface, and then they switched it up, and it was just ridiculous. I mean, I hated it.
And the biggest problem for me, and I think you're right in saying that it's Rob Zombie influences, because I don't know who to root for in this movie. Everyone is unlikable. There's not a single likable character in it. The nurse is too naive and too to kind of get behind. So you don't even end up rooting for her. And yeah, the movie hinges on that twist. The twist is the movie. That was the entire concept behind it. It was the whole point of the execution, and it just doesn't work. It kind of goes against every other portrayal of the character that we've had up until this point. And it ends up being very boring, and it's just you're following around a whole bunch of unlikable people with zero development. It just kind of sucks.
Like me personally, this is one of the few franchises where I actually don't hate any of the movies. But I'm not going to say they're all good either. Like I can rewatch any of them, not often. But with Leatherface, the whole thing like this, like you guys were saying, he's a pretty boy. He's supposed to be a mentally deficient character, and in this one, he's completely functional. And it's just, the only thing is he gets shot in the face, and then his face is all screwed up, and Mama stitches it up, and now I don't know. It wasn't on board really.
Although I like the way that they actually explained why he wears the mask in this one better than in the remake part of the series. Just that it was an accident that blew it off instead of like a skin disease kind of thing. That's okay. But that's like the only saving grace.
Yeah.
And the gore. The gore is not bad.
It feels like Natural Born Killers with a chainsaw.
Yeah.
All right, well, that'll take us down to number 7. Number 7 with 196 points, also a pretty high score there, was one of the more infamous of the bunch, Texas Chainsaw 3D. It was also ranked dead last 9 times. It got the same amount of dead last rankings as Leatherface did, but the best score that it got was second place, which one person did rank it in second. So it got slightly better scores in there. On the panel, the Wieners, you guys both gave it your dead last here, so a couple dead lasts there. Matt, also fairly low in 7th place. Bo, a little bit higher in 6th place, and I gave this the highest in 5th place. I guess I have to defend that, but I'm not going to defend it too much because it's still a pretty terrible movie. I did love the intro, the introduction of this movie where they kind of set it back in the old days. Like right after the first movie, I thought that there was a lot of great attention to detail there. I loved the continuity. I liked bringing back the previous actors. But the timeline of this movie makes no sense, and we all know that I'm going to be tearing apart timelines. There's a lot of illogical gaps in this movie. You've got the hitchhiker that they just pick up, and then they take to their house, and then they just leave him there, and like, oh yeah, you can stay in the house. Yeah, sure. Like, you're not going to rip us off. to not telling somebody that there's a psychopath in the basement, like, how is that not the first thing that's in the letter or the lawyer says is like, oh, hey, there's a crazy guy in the basement. And then the most absurd thing is the making Leatherface some sort of a good guy. A good guy that the main character is cool with, even though he just slaughtered her boyfriend and friends. Yeah, it's not a great movie. But at least, I will say that at least there was things in it that kept it entertaining, and I wasn't ever bored, and I didn't ever want to just stop. But it's not in any way, shape, or form good.
Should we start with Do Your Thing, Cuz?
Do your thing, cuz.
Because after that, it's like, what? Huh?
Like, it's not like you. I like, the first 10, 15 minutes, whatever it is, where it's set back in 74, and they brought back Gunnar Hansen and Grandpa, and they brought back Marilyn Burns. Had Mosley as Drayton.
Mm-hmm.
They have the whole shootout. I like that part, and then for everything else from there, a 27-year-old playing a 40-year-old is not believable. No one else aged that was in 74 and then in 2013. It doesn't make any sense.
Her friends were kind of just horrible people, and I really didn't feel bad when they got killed. Sometimes I at least one or two characters, I'm like, okay, you're okay, yeah, I feel bad you're gone now, but someone's just like, just get them, do it, because they're annoying.
Do your thing, cuz.
I've never been a huge 3D guy. I mean, I think the ball stopped with Friday the 13th Part 3 for me, and Jaws 3D was just, ridiculous. And now you got a movie that is so old school and rich, and then you try to put fast action chainsaw welding maniac, behind a 3D lens, just didn't do it for me. And I really hated his outfit. I don't know where they came up with the red, shirt and the weird overalls and all that. It just didn't look really spectacular on film to me. The storyline, I mean, like you said, the beginning of the film was really cool to bring back the nostalgia flashback scenes and have Bill Moseley play as Grandpa and have the whole setting of the farmhouse right there. It really captured me in the beginning, but just the whole storyline started to decrease, during the process of the movie. And everyone said it, Go Do Your Thing, Cuz was just so cringeworthy to me. I hated it. It was not.
Do your thing, cuz.
It was not, fun for me. But overall, I mean, I guess if you had to do an opinion, I would rank it where I ranked it because it's just not that great.
Yeah, and really because of this story, my wife Ayumi hates horror movies, and she came to me and she said, "Hey, let's go see Texas Chainsaw 3D. I'm curious about this film." And she's scared of electric toothbrushes, so I'm like, "This is gonna be great. This is gonna be a fun time at the movie. She's gonna scream. It's gonna be awesome." We go to see this movie. We walk out of the theater. She turns to me and she goes, "Leatherface is a good man. He cares about his family." And I said, "That's what you took away from this movie? So you robbed me, movie, of a good movie-going experience where my wife would have screamed and we would have had fun." No, now she's like, "What a family man. I love that guy. Man, I wish he was part of my family. Screw you, Texas 3D. You blew it."
Oh man, I feel like we need a Yumi to defend herself there.
Well, Ayumi looked at me and she went, so there you go.
Do your thing, cuz.
All right, so moving up a little bit more here, going into number 6. And at number 6 at 195 points, only 1 point ahead of Texas Chainsaw 3D, only 1 point between those two movies, is Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning. That's right, it was ranked dead last 4 times, and the best score that it got was 3rd place, which 2 people ranked it 3rd. On the panel, I ranked it dead last. It's my least favorite movie here. Matt, Bo, and Daryl all gave it 5th place, so a little lower than middle. And Annie, you gave it the highest ranking. You gave it 4th place. So I want to hear, what about this one made it a little bit higher for you?
I just like that it explains a little bit more about how the sheriff became the sheriff and stuff like that. And it's not the worst of the series. I had seen worse already, so it's like, yeah, it's not that bad. So it's just one of those like it's not terrible. Or as terrible actually.
Out of the bunch for me, this was the most dull. It was kind of like mean-spirited and pointless and dull to me. They kind of do the intro showing like the terrible settings of his upbringing to kind of humanize him a bit, but then he's just an inhuman monster for the entire rest of the movie. And this movie was made at like the height of like the torture porn horror realm, and it kind of shows, because that's what it kind of feels like. It feels like here's a bunch of characters and here's the worst way possible that we can bump them off. And I think one of the other things is it's supposed to be in the 60s, and no one looks remotely like they're from the 60s. Everyone looks very like polished and Hollywood handsome. I mean, I'm not going to complain about seeing Dior Baird. I'm never going to be mad about her being in anything. But it's just this one suffers from the cardinal sin of horror movies for me, in that it's boring. I didn't care about anything that ever happened. It missed and it's missing that insanity that the Texas Chainsaw movies have. Like, everyone felt just like calculated killers. No one felt insane and like dirty, which is what, you go to these movies for. I mean, at least me.
I mean, it's definitely a cash grab movie. There's nothing too great about this. There's really nothing really to say about it. The beginning I kind of enjoyed because it did kind of give an origin story that I thought was more appropriate to the character than anything I've seen, in any of the other movies. But at the same time, yeah, it didn't need to be made. Any movie where I'm like, well, I know how this ends, and no one's getting out of this. This is, no one's going to survive this. This is, we know that it's the beginning. So it just seemed pointless to me. And yeah, you're right. It's torture porn for the sake of torture porn. It's just scene after scene of ugliness. There's no real character development. You want to know how these people got to be this crazy. That is an origin story, not, oh, they're already crazy, but this guy found an outfit and now he's a sheriff or whatever. Like, whatever. I don't care. This is terrible. It's a terrible movie. Just because I ranked a little higher doesn't mean I liked it.
It's hard to defend a lot of the movie because, like you guys said, it doesn't really give you a lot of beginning. It tries to like pound home things like, how did Monty lose his legs? How did the sheriff lose his teeth? Not that we care. It's stuff from the remake that we didn't care how it happened, but they wanted to make sure we knew. But anytime a movie's got Arlie Ermey, I'm in.
If you're gonna say the movie's a beginning and you're gonna call it the beginning, I really think they should have focused on the original. I really think they should have made it more about the characters from the original film and really touched base on how Leatherface began. They dropped the ball with it again, just like they did in the Leatherface 2001 or whatever it was, because they show him as a baby, they show him becoming Leatherface a little bit, and then they just goes right into a senseless killer, like you said. It's one of those things where I really want to see the beginning of why and how and the reasoning behind Leatherface and the family, rather than just, I mean, the only good thing about this film, in my opinion, was, Arlie Ermey. I mean, he's great. I love his character. But I feel like I said they should have touched base on the original characters as a whole family. Maybe give an explanation of what really makes them become deranged from the get-go. I mean, if you just throw a bunch of crazy people in a farmhouse and then it says, okay, now we're going to eat because we're starving and the town's closing or whatever, didn't do it for me. I did like the scene where he's walking down and the eerie music hits and he's down the road with a chainsaw, and it shows like him going down and becoming Leatherface at that point. But they could have touched base on a lot of more history, and I didn't really dig that.
All right, moving up now on the list to number 5, we've got a tie. 2 movies both had 154 points, so we need to have a tiebreaker. Let's go to my wife, Christy.
Hello. So between Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 and 4, I'm basically choosing between Vigo in 3 and McConaughey in 4. and McConaughey has a robot leg. So I think I'm gonna stick with 4 and the robot leg and Matthew McConaughey. So yes, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4.
Which means that at number 5 with 154 points is Leatherface Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. It was ranked dead last 2 times, and it was ranked number 1 time. So it got a pretty wide range of scores. People were pretty split on this one. On the panel, the We Nerds, you guys both had it fairly low in 6th place. Me and Matt both had it a little higher in 4th place. And Bo, you had this one the highest. You had it in 3rd place. So you had the most love for Texas Chainsaw 3.
Well, I remember being like, I'm so terrible with age, but I remember being like probably 11 years old, 10 years old, and seeing the trailer like on a VHS tape of another movie and showing Leatherface standing there and having lightning come down and the music and having him just turn around and just with a big old saw that I've never even seen before. And holy crap, that's great. You know, we got another Leatherface movie coming out. I really enjoyed his look in this one for some reason. I know I'm a big, you know, critic when it comes to changing costumes if you're going to stay as a horror, you know, icon, but I really dug his look. The whole thing with the brace. Yeah, man, Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw 3 was great. The family was creepy. The little girl with the doll. I mean, that's just, you know, creepy to me. I don't know. It was another perspective of the family, which, you know, people can have their critics about, critic thoughts about. But I actually like the fact that, you know, they, like I said, they kept a little bit of a nod to the original, and going from part 1 to this one, even though there's different characters. But his look is cool. The trailer kicked ass, and it was a fun movie for sure.
Vigo's character's kind of just iffy to me. I don't know. Some scenes I like him. Some scenes it's just like I just want to kick him in the face with a boot. It's a rough watch for me.
I first saw this silently in a drive-in because I'm old. My parents, I don't remember how old I was because I don't remember what year it came out, but the family went to see, I think it was Look Who's Talking at the drive-in. I was looking out the back window at Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, and I thought, this is really cool. And then, like, a little older, I rented it, and I'm like, yeah, this isn't very good. I didn't like the implication that the girl is Leatherface's daughter through sexual assault.
Yeah.
That really bothers me. It's completely unlike his character. I guess not totally unlike his character because he had a thing for Stretch, but I just don't feel that he would keep someone captive long enough to impregnate them and let them give birth and then off them. Just feels out of character.
I'm like so on it. I think that like there's things about it that I do really like, but for the most part, I don't love it. It's not one that I get excited about rewatching. I feel like that they tried too hard to overcorrect from the second movie. Like everyone criticized the second movie for being too silly, so they were like, okay, fine, you thought that was too silly. Let's just give you completely unsilly. We're gonna give you as serious as we can make it, and it's just. I think to me that the reason why Tobe Hooper went so crazy with part 2 is because he realizes that if he just tried to make a sequel to the original one, he would end up with this movie. I don't know. It doesn't have that same flavor, the same insanity, the same weirdness and dirtiness that the original had. And I will say, I will agree 100%. If the movie had an ounce of the inventiveness that teaser trailer had, then this movie would be really, really high up on this ranking, because that teaser is amazing. And Leatherface was, you know, he's more aggressive in this one, but he's also a little bit more generic. He's just kind of like a Jason-y character here to me.
Leatherface in this one, he lacks personality. He's more just like a killing machine monster, generic, like you were saying, like a Jason. There's no sympathy. There's he's just a monster. He could be a Frankenstein. It could be Dracula. Whatever. He's a monster. The family dynamic in this one, I wasn't really digging that much. It seemed more like an action movie to me than a horror film. There's a lot of action. It ends on kind of a high note. Or now I'm a badass. That's not Texas Chainsaw to me. Texas Chainsaw is supposed to be a nightmare that you want to escape. It shouldn't be a thrill ride in the sense of like a Mad Max, which it almost feels like to me. Like I love Ken Foree. I love the cast. The cast is phenomenal. You even have Stretch coming back as a news reporter. I think that was a great little tidbit, right? Yeah, they New Line tried way too hard to get a franchise villain with this one. They just needed to stick to the source material more of the grittiness, less of the action. I think they would have been fine. But all in all, I'd watch it again. It's not unwatchable.
Well, then we move on to our number 4 movie, the most divisive movie on this list. Also with 154 points and the tiebreaker from Christie is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Next Generation, or Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4. This movie was ranked dead last 4 times, so it did get 4 dead last nods, but it did get 1 number 1 score. Somebody ranked it their favorite of the Texas Chainsaw series. On the panel, Bo, you had this the lowest in 7th place. Matt, you had it a touch higher in 6th place. Annie, slightly higher still in 5th place. And me and Mr. Meathook gave it 3rd place, the highest on there. And I'm just going to defend this one because I kind of love this movie. It's ridiculous, and it's just so weird and bizarre that I'm just entranced by it. It's a bad movie. By any stretch of the imagination, it's a bad movie. But it's just so weird and fun. But you've got Matthew McConaughey and you've got Renee Zellweger, and they're both pretty great. And they don't make the same mistakes that Part 3 did, but then they kind of do. There's like a drive-through pizza place, and the guy like passes the pizza through the window at a 90-degree angle, and I don't know why that bothers me, but he like hands it out like that. It's like, thank you for that pizza, I guess. You know, my biggest critique of this one is Leatherface. This one went in the complete opposite direction with the whole dumb vulnerable thing, and he got shoved into like a secondary role, and Vilmer kind of became the primary antagonist. But thankfully, Vilmer is amazing, and every second McConaughey is on screen, I am a happy dude, because he is just going so far over the top and having a blast, and it's kind of fun to watch, and I get a kick out of it.
Yeah, I mean, Renee Zellweger and Matthew were great. I mean, that you can't go wrong denying their acting abilities in any roles usually. But I just feel the Leatherface was just a dumb, big weirdo instead of, being a crazy maniac killer, being aggressive, and you can still play the part as being confused and vulnerable. But at the same time, the ending, I don't understand about the whole limo guy with his shirt open, with his Hellraiser, belly and body modifications, and it's like, what the hell did that even have to do with anything? I mean, the timelines, which you're obviously a master at, Josh, doesn't really make sense to me in the ending when she's sitting in the hospital and she sees, which I believe is supposed to be Marilyn Burns, correct?
Yeah.
How does that even take place?
It's I think it's supposed to be more of a metaphorical thing than anything else. Just
a little egg Easter cameo there, right there. I mean, it's just like, dude. So anyways, yeah, I did not enjoy this film. I mean, I've probably only seen it a handful of, like, maybe 2-3 times, and that was good enough for me.
As you know, and as Annie knows, and everyone else knows, I love bad movies. This is like the epitome of a bad movie. The first time I saw this movie, I was like, I hate this. What the F did I just watch? And I still ask that when I watch it, but I don't hate it anymore. I love it for its insanity, especially once Matthew McConaughey goes full Dennis Hopper. Like the first half of the movie, admittedly, it's kind of a slog, but then once Kilmer shows up and it starts going, it's a blast, and I can't say enough good things about at least the second half of the movie. And then at the very end, of course, you have the cameos by Marilyn Burns, Paul Partain, and John Dugan. I love cameos like that where they reach out to the original cast and have them in. So yeah, Leatherface is weird in this, I'll admit. Like the cross-dressing thing, I don't care about that, but just him being like a whiny little baby every time anything goes wrong is kind of out of character.
Yeah, I mean, everyone pretty much summed it up great, honestly. I also love bad movies. I mean, I could watch The Room 100 times. And this is Texas Chainsaw. The Room almost. There's just one fatal flaw with this. This movie is so damn loud. It is a headache-inducing, just loud, horrible movie that when Renee Zellweger tells everyone to shut up, I'm like, yes, please, just shut up. Okay, there is one great scene in this, though, and that's where Leatherface is chasing Renee Zellweger around, and they're doing all these homages to the first one where she's falling out a window, she's climbing TV antennas. She runs into this room, and she's like,
No, he's out there with a chainsaw.
wow. Really? That's your reaction? That's how far you want to take this? It's almost like she just ran into somebody that kicked their dog outside or something. It's like, there's a guy out there. Kick the dog. Unbelievable. No, you've been chased for 30 minutes. Anyway, it's stupid. Leatherface is awful in this. Like, and it's not like the Wiener said, it's not the cross-dressing thing. It's the fact that he's not doing anything. He's just whiny. He's just constantly just, I'm like, give me a break, God, and a Tylenol. I can't take it. Anyway.
McConaughey's as much as he can in this movie. That's the McConaughey intensifies in that one. I can deal with that. I'm not a big Roxy Hart fan, so Renee Zellweger can go away. And the fact that they don't explain the whole point of the Illuminati there, like why do they have them here? What's going on? What's the connection? It's a lot of unanswered questions, and it feels more like a John Waters movie than a Texas Chainsaw movie. I'm waiting for Divine to come out dressed like Leatherface. It's just like one of those. It's just way over the top.
You kind of got that. It was like almost.
Yeah.
It's like almost there.
But it's not. I'll watch it again, but it's not really my top.
All right, so here we go into the top three. The top three already. Here we go, man. I think some of these are pretty exciting, although here's one that I'm not that excited about, because at number 3 with 149 points is the 2003 Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. It was ranked dead last 5 times, actually. I should point out that that's more dead lasts than the last 3 movies have gotten. But the best score that it got was first place, which it did get 2 times. 2 people did rank it as their top spot. On the panel, I had it the lowest. I had it in 7th place. Bo and Daryl, you guys both had it in 4th place. And Matt and Annie, you guys both had it in 3rd place. And I think this one is well made, but it just so blatantly misses the point of the original for me. That it took me out of it. Everything in it is way too clean. Everyone is way too pretty. You've got this little inbred boy in the movie that just looks like a regular kid with phony teeth in. Other than that, he just looks like a kid. And what kind of a name is Kemper? Anyway, like, I could see if it was one of the inbred people. It's like, oh, Kemper over there. But it was just like one of the guys on the trip, and his name is Kemper. But even like Leatherface in this one, even he looks too polished. It doesn't look like a skin mask to me. It looks like a special effects mask. And the one point that I thought was very clever and inventive and was just like, oh, that's off-putting, is the scene where he does wear the boyfriend's face, which I thought was a good, disturbing moment from a movie that just didn't unsettle me or disturb me at all.
This movie suffers from a couple problems. One, there's another movie called Texas Chainsaw Massacre. If this was a standalone thing, it would have been much better. If it's a remake of one of the greatest horror films of all time, maybe the greatest horror film of all time, it's just, yeah, it's like you said, it's too polished. But another great movie theater story, I saw this in the theater, and the couple next to me, when they found the engagement ring in that dude's pocket, the girl got up and yelled, "I can't believe you took me to see this," slapped the guy, and walked out of the theater. So if a movie can break up a couple, then I'm like, okay, well, it had an effect. So it can't be, obviously they'll remember it. Yeah, it's a remake. What do you expect? It's not great. It's serviceable. If if the new generation wants to watch Texas Chainsaw movie, maybe that's theirs, but mine will always be the original and the greatest.
I hadn't seen it since it first came out on DVD, so I rewatched it not that long ago, obviously, and I liked it a lot more than I did back then, because I noticed that it's not. Yes, it's a remake, but it's not just a complete rehash, scene by scene, of the original. It took the story and it made it its own, and I'm okay with that. And once again, Arlie Emery's in it; he's cool. And I like his character just because he's just so un-Arlie Emery-ish, if that's a word. He's not the big disciplined guy that he normally is. He's kind of wacky. And it's a decent movie, so it's one I wouldn't mind watching again too.
It wasn't exciting. It was very just like monotone the whole way. I mean, I think the kill with the hitchhiker was cool. It was one of those things where seeing her head get blown off and watching the zoom go through it was pretty brutal, and going, wow, that's pretty gnarly stuff. But the point of him being, I mean, my favorite part of the whole film, like you said, Josh, is when he cuts the boyfriend's face off and puts it on. Leave it at that. Let that be Leatherface for the rest of the movie. I mean, I don't know why they had to have a face change. It just didn't make sense. I mean, I think if you're going to go with the big, the whole new story, make it that, let him have that new characteristic look, because it's fresh. It looks like it's brand new skin. It doesn't look all like rotted and weird and dry. And for a whole new audience to come and watch Texas Chainsaw, which probably some teenagers never saw before, that is a perfect explanation of, Leatherface, having him have a new face of the boyfriend. One of those situations when it comes to having it really be exciting for me, it just kind of was dull, but I enjoyed it. I mean, if overall, I think it's a fun film.
Yeah. Actually, when I originally before we started watching them again, I had made a list based on memory, and I had it much lower on the list. And I watched it. I was like, you know what? I don't hate this as much as I thought I did, because we got like Daniel Pearl's cinematography in that movie is incredible. I think the after she blows her head off and the camera pans out her head, I don't think that's just one of the coolest. That's not just the coolest scene in the movie. I think that's one of the coolest shots in any movie ever. Arlie Ermy is amazing in the movie. My biggest problem with the movie is that it was successful, because once the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake did well, they're like, oh, hey, we can start remaking all these classics and people will go see it. And that's how we get Nightmare on Elm Street 2010. Yeah. So no, the cultural impact of it being that successful bothers me, and that's why it's as low as it is. But I think it's actually a really good remake, in my opinion.
That is a great point, though. If that movie tanks, consider it would have saved us so much suffering. I didn't even think of that.
All right, so now we go to the big two. And at number 2, with 73 points, of course, is Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. The lowest score that Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 got was 7th place. One person did rank it in 7th, and the best score that it got was 1st place. 8 people gave it 1st place, so it's clearly a loved movie. On the panel, also very loved. Me and Matt both gave it 2nd place, and Bo, Annie, and Daryl all gave it your number 1 spot.
Oh God, let's see. Bill Moseley just chewing up the scene. You got like super coked up Dennis Hopper going full Dennis Hopper and then some. You got the Oingo Boingo soundtrack.
Yeah.
Caroline Williams in booty shorts. Leatherface pretending that his chainsaw is a penis. I mean, it's all kinds of crazy. The movie's just bonkers. And this isn't just my favorite Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. This is in my top 5 of all horror movies ever.
I've seen this like a few years ago for the first time. And the first thing that caught me was the soundtrack, because I'm a big, huge Danny Elfman Oingo Boingo fan. I actually have a print that's signed by all the members. So as soon as I saw that scene and they played No One Lives Forever, I'm like, I'm in. I love this movie already. And then just like you said, Mosley's awesome in it, and Dennis Hopper dual wielding chainsaws and whatnot. It's a fun watch, and just it's so polar it's not polar opposite of the first one, but it's totally different, but it still feels like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie because everyone's just nuts.
Yeah, I love this movie. At my old job, I used to quote it all the time. I had a guy that worked in the mold shop. I'd go, "You idiot! You idiot!" And I was like, "The number one, number one." I'm like constantly quoting it all day to my wife's disdain. But I just love everything about it. I love the manic energy of it. I love the way it's lit. It's almost like you're in a fever dream, like you had way too much NyQuil. And it's something about Dennis Hopper who's on way too many drugs, like the Wieners were saying. And just the whole movie is so much fun. It's so jokey and comical. Even when it's supposed to be terrifying, it's really not. I just absolutely adore it. It's in the realm of sequels, out of like Halloween's or Nightmare on Elm Streets, besides Dream Warriors, this is one of the greatest sequels of all time. Even from the movie poster to just how different it is from the original. If you're going to do Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a sequel, you can't do the first one again. You're never going to hit that. You got to go crazier with it, and then he did, and we have a masterpiece. I love this movie.
Yeah, you kind of know that it's going to be a radically different movie from the opening. You know it's going to be crazy, and even from beyond that, as soon as you see that Breakfast Club looking poster, you know that you're not going to get the same experience from this movie that you got from the first. Although I do want to point out, Dennis Hopper referred to this as one of the worst movies he's ever made, which, number one, makes me question Dennis Hopper's taste. And number two, makes me wonder how many of his movies that he's actually seen, because I could name about 4 or 5 worse ones on there right there. Yeah, but you know what? Honestly, yes, I agree. This was the best way. I mean, Tobe Hooper obviously said, there's no way I can recapture what I did in the first movie. It would be foolish to try. So let me just really switch up the game and give you something that you haven't seen before. And he did. And I kind of like the way that he gave everyone an ending. It would be like, yeah, go ahead and try and continue it after this. Yeah, my killer now has a chainsaw going all the way through his body. Go ahead and make a sequel now. Ha ha. But they did.
I'm just gonna say that, if someone were to ask me, what's my favorite horror movie of all time, I'd say Halloween, and then I would go Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. I'm a huge 80s kid, and I loved watching this growing up. I wasn't supposed to watch it, obviously, because of the gore and the sex demeanor, but I literally fell in love with this movie at a very young age, and it's one of the best horror films ever made. You get the gore, you get the funny scenes, you get the music, the soundtrack, the bridge scene with the hitchhiker and Leatherface with Oingo Boingo, No One Lives Forever, is one of the greatest shot scenes ever, in my opinion. Even though it was a short bridge, it looks like they're going 60 miles an hour 3 miles down the road. Caroline Williams, breakout star right there. I mean, as a scream queen. I mean, everything about this film is just absolutely one of my favorites. And the tag team of Chop Top and Bubba, you can't beat that when it comes to a duo. I mean, it's fun. It's if you're going to ask me to show a horror film to someone that's never seen a horror film, I would probably pick this movie.
So that just leaves us with our number one movie. And I think this was a lock. I think this was a given. I don't think this will surprise many people to know that at number one, with a mere 52 points, is the original 1974 Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The lowest score that it did get one 6th place nod. And the best score that it got was first place. 21 out of 33 people ranked it in their top spot. There was only one vote of 33 that was not in the top 3. There you go. On the panel, Matt and I had it as number 1, and Bo, Annie, and Daryl all had it in 2nd place. Very, very close, very close contender.
If I think of a horror film, I think of this movie. Now, I love Nightmare on Elm Street. It's probably my favorite horror film of all time. But Texas Chainsaw Massacre is what I think a horror film should be. It's gritty. It makes you feel uncomfortable. It's scary. The way it's shot, it feels like you're there. It's not so much a movie, it's like it puts you in that. You're with these people. These people are realistic. And the soundtrack puts you on edge immediately. There's no real music. It's industrial machines going off. It's like, oh man, this is not a pleasant time. Even when the characters are having fun at the house, you feel on edge. And the first time you see Leatherface is one of the scariest moments of any movie. I don't care what it is. Just the characters, the hitchhiking scene, everything is tense. It's gritty. It's dark. Oh, it's just a beautiful horror film. Probably. Oh man, it's going to be a toss up between Nightmare on Elm Street and this for greatest horror film of all time, in my opinion.
I mean, it's pure terror. It's absolutely gritty. It's absolutely scary. It's one of those things. Watching it as a kid, I didn't really get the appreciation until I was more of an adult, because I wanted to see more like fun characters like part two. But it definitely is terrifying, and it shows the POV from just being as an audience watching this. Toby Hooper had a masterpiece with just showing the world that there is crazy psychopathic people out there. And when you think about a psychopath, you think about 1974 Leatherface. The ending is pretty insane when she's caked in blood, just in delirium, laughing that she got away, and what the hell did she just experience? It's terrifying. I remember seeing this film at a very young age and just being scared to watch it again, because it was so gritty and just terrifying, and is absolutely cinematographic pure gold. I mean, it's great.
So there's a couple things I dislike about the movie, but for the most part, I love this movie. But a couple things I dislike. First and foremost, Franklin is one of the most annoying characters of all time, right up there. So yeah, like he's part of the reason that it's not number one. That's probably about the only reason. And you got like the cultural impact. It's part of the reason that slashers became a thing. It's, it helped lay the foundation for slashers as we know them. I guess not so much now, but in the 80s and early 90s. Also, like everybody, for years thought that like it was real events. It wasn't just loosely based on Ed Gein. There's people that claim, oh yeah, my dad was in prison with the guy that did that. Like, no, he wasn't. You're a liar. But it's got that kind of cultural impact that people still swear that it was real.
I hadn't seen it till I was about 7 or 8 years old. And up until that point, what?
I hadn't seen it till I was
Well,
about 7 or 8.
My mom was a horror movie fan too, so I watched them with her. But up until that point, all the villains in horror movies were Gremlins or Freddy. They weren't like real things. And then when I saw Texas Chainsaw, and Leatherface is a real human being who doesn't have these natural powers, who just has the power of a chainsaw, it scared the crap out of me as a kid. And it's just so gritty, and it feels like I'm watching a snuff film, because just the first scene when you see him and he clubs the guy over the head and he starts having a seizure. That's what really happens when you get clubbed upside the head. And it's like, it just has this realism to it that it feels like a snuff film. You feel dirty watching it, and I love it for that.
I love this movie. It's just a classic. And my favorite thing about it is this is the movie to pull out when you are trying to explain the concept of atmosphere to someone. If someone's just like, I don't know what you mean by that, the movie has an atmosphere. Here, watch this movie. Because you're so pulled in to this world by watching this movie. And everyone has used the word documentary and snuff film and realism, because you feel like you're watching someone's home movies, because they've created that atmosphere of reality. I know a large number of people that have never watched this movie because it's too gross and it's too gory, because people have told them about all these gory scenes in the movie and how it's so violent. And there's hardly any blood in this movie. And my other favorite thing is the fact that it understands that you need to humanize the villains, and you kind of get where these villains are coming from. They're not just evil, cackling evil, like, we're trying to kill everybody, like it becomes in the later movies. Just like, we love to kill and eat people. And that's kind of one of the interesting things about it is the killers are not just evil for the sake of being evil. There's a purpose to it, and there's a realism to that as well. And it just does it so well. And it deserves its #1 spot.
Do your thing, cuz.
All right, so there you have it. There's 8 movies all ranked up there, and let's take a look at this ranking and see how everything is. I guess I'm fine with this. There's several things in here that I don't necessarily agree with, but there's nothing I'm mad at. There's nothing I'm too upset, as long as the first and second one are up high. But you guys can let me know what you thought. If there's anything you think is in the wrong spot, please put that down below in the comments. Where would you like to see these movies, and what's your ranking? Put it down below. Leave that in the comments. If you enjoyed watching this, click on that old like button. If you want to see more episodes of Dead Last, of course, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell, because you have to do all of those things in order to find out when there's more videos coming out. It's a pain in the butt, but you got to do it. Also, please check out the Patreon page at patreon.com/movietimelines. And patrons get to vote on a different roster of movies every single month. They get to do rankings, and it's kind of fun. It's a cool little community thing we do, and it's pretty neat. We're working on 2 episodes in advance now, so there's plenty of time for people to watch movies and everything. So it's a lot of fun. So if you want to join that, please feel free to do so. I want to thank my panel for all coming on board today and helping me out with talk about these movies. Thank you guys very, very much for coming on board. It was good to have you. So I hope you
Thank you.
hopefully you enjoyed yourself talking about saws. But yeah, well, thank you guys, and thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it, and we'll see you very shortly for another great video. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye. I'm going to pause for a second. I got to use the restroom and get this cat off my lap, please. I know, I'm sorry.